Hello again. So I'm quickly going to go over the research paper. If you look at the semester plan, we can see that the deadline for the first draft of the research paper is the 7th of May. And then we're going to discuss that. We're going to have private discussions, consultations here, discussing the first draft of the research paper in two groups. So there is also going to be a deadline for the research paper paragraph, a body paragraph, on the 20th of April. That's one of the body paragraphs. So as usual, I've got 10 minutes to go over this, so it's not so long. I better get on with the research paper then. Okay, it's this chapter from a book. It says writing the paper. Okay, that's what it is. So writing on page 146, it says writing 6a, writing the final thesis sentence. We talked about that in the last video, writing the thesis sentence, so I don't need to go over that so much. I put a whole document in there, but here is a little summary here as well. There are examples of thesis statements here, and even on the next page, and the next page here, so you can read all that. No, actually, sorry, it's here because on the next page it's really goes on to writing a title. I think you know how to do that. It's not such a big problem. Then it says 6C, understanding your purpose and role as a writer. Well, it is to try to prove what you're trying to prove to the reader. Really, that's what it's all about. Really, I would say, with good explanation. So let's move on. It says writing with a computer. I think you know how to do that. And then it goes on, and drafting your paper here. You can read about that. Writing in the proper tense. Well, I think you can do that. If you're referring to something that's in the past and it's finished, it's past simple. But if it's something that, say, for example, that is still alive now, so even if you're writing about Shakespeare and Shakespeare's work is still relevant now, you can say Shakespeare states that. So even if something's in the past, you can say Smith states that 2005. Yep. Okay, so and then we come on to the language of the discipline here. I think you can look at that. And then we have well, writing in the third person, that kind of avoids you saying I believe. We talked about that before. You don't say I believe that. Yep, because it's not academic. So writing with unity and coherence. Well, unity just means one topic, one paragraph. We talked about that when we were thinking about writing and constructing body paragraphs. One topic, one paragraph. Coherence means that it all flows and it all goes together really quite well and makes sense. To help you do that, I'm going to go over linking and transition expressions to help it all flow and go together quite well. But it talks about that here. And let's move on, writing the introduction of the paper. So this is the first substantial part here. So it says here, use the first few paragraphs of your paper to establish the nature of your study, but keep the introduction short and directed towards the issues. Some writers wait to write the introduction until they have developed the body and the conclusion. I'm just going to pop over to this side of the page here because it says provide background information. Well, this is basically what it's all about. You're trying to give the reader background to what you are talking about, what it's all about really. So you've got to give enough background information so that the reader understands what it's all about before they dive into your analysis. So on this page, I'm going to go back to this page here. It talks about subject, identify your specific topic, then define, limit and narrow it to one issue. Background, well, I've talked about that, give a lot of background information. The problem, the point of the research paper is to explore or resolve a problem, so identify and explain the complications that you see. So the thesis sentence, we've talked about that in great depth, it has to be there. Opening with your thesis statement, you can do that, I suppose. Relating to the well-known, you can do that. Provide background information, yes, very, very, very important. Reviewing the literature, if you have to, do that. Reviewing the history and background of the subject, you can do that as well. You can take exceptions to critical views if that's what your paper is about, or you can challenge an assumption saying that global warming isn't man-made, for example, and it's caused by maybe, I don't know, the sun. Providing a brief summary, you can do that in the introduction as well. Define key terms. Supply data, statistics, special evidence, and it talks about avoiding certain mistakes in the opening here. So that's your beginning. It should be about maybe a page, 3/4 of a page, possibly. Maybe it could be 250, 300 words, something like that. Now, the body of the research paper, we've talked about that for a lot. We've talked about this a lot this semester. Strong body paragraphs, that's what it's all about, really. And it talks about that. We know all about this, like for example, comparing and contrasting. We've covered that already. Developing cause and effect, I've talked about that. This is evidence and support that is going over here. Define your key terminology, but perhaps this should be in the introduction, possibly. But showing a process, I've talked about that already. We know all about that. Asking questions and providing answers, you can do that. Citing evidence from source materials, which is just here. Yes, you can do that. And then it talks about using a variety of other methods as well. And we know about that. You can give an example and so forth, but it has to be structured. That's why I give you the strong body paragraph structure. And each body paragraph should have the numbers in it, inserted in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2 is optional, as you know. So yes, we've got all that. And it says writing paragraphs of substance in the for the body of the paper. Yes, you are trying to prove something. It's not just descriptive, but you're trying to persuade and prove something to the reader. Okay, right, we know all about that. I've got about 2 minutes left, so time goes quickly. So writing the conclusion of the research paper, very, very important. So the first thing to do is restate the thesis statement, yes, and say what that is in your own words, in one sentence. Restate it, and then reaching beyond it. Well, I would say before you reach beyond it, just say how your research paper has supported the thesis statement in a few sentences. It should have supported that in the body paragraphs. By the way, there should be 2 body paragraphs, each of around about 200 to 300 words, maybe a bit longer than 300 words, maybe. Okay, the conclusion of the research paper should be maybe 250 words, something like that. 250 words. So after you restate the thesis statement and say how your research paper has supported the thesis statement, just to remind the reader how it has done that, then reach beyond it. It says, as a general rule, restate your thesis statement. However, do not assume that your reader will generate final conclusions about the issues. Instead, establish the essential mission of your study. For example, a literary study novel should turn from the analysis of the work to a discussion of the author's accomplishments. A business paper can establish guidelines and directives. Guidelines and directives are good, yes. A geology study might discuss in depth the significance of the findings. So don't go on to a new topic, but just say maybe relate it to the real world, relate it to a solution to a problem, something like that. Make it somehow real, yeah, just at the end. And then closing with an effective quotation, you can do that. Offering a directive or solution, we talked about that. Discussing test results, well, you won't do that because you're not going to do that. Then it talks about avoiding certain mistakes in the conclusion as well, but try to write an effective conclusion. Okay, thank you very much.